Welcome to Microsoft Ignite, everyone. I hope you're having an amazing day wherever you're tuning in from. My name is Amara Anigbo, and I'm a PM for Microsoft Mixed Reality Apps. We have an amazing panel here with us today who can all speak to their experiences in mixed reality. So let's jump into the panel and have them introduce themselves. We'll first start off with Catherine.
Hey everybody, my name is Catherine Diaz, and I'm currently an engineer on the Mixed Reality Toolkit team, which is the MRTK for Unity.
Cool, we can go now to April.
Hi everyone, my name is April Spate. I am on the cloud advocacy team for spatial computing here at Microsoft. My role is to help raise awareness and get you all started with mixed reality.
Nice. Now we can move on to Archana.
Hi, I'm Archana Iyer. I'm a program manager on the Azure Object Anchors team, so I work in the mixed reality cloud space.
Awesome. Thank you all for your introduction. So I want to start off with our first question about what was your journey into mixed reality and what were some of the obstacles that you faced along the way? How did you manage to overcome them?
So I'll go ahead and start for us. And so my journey to mixed reality started out with a heavy interest in visual effects in movies. So movies like Avatar, Iron Man, Pixar movies was the start of my love for computer graphics. And from there, I learned how to use Maya, Photoshop, and other creative programs that just further expanded my technology skills. So when I was using those programs, I always wondered about the underlying math, computer science that drove these programs. So that's what led me to choose computer science as a major with the intention of focusing on graphics. And from there, I ended up joining a course called Introduction to Mixed Reality. And that was the first introduction that I had to the virtual and augmented reality space. And that was an immediate, this is for me. Yes, I love it. And so from that course, I ended up getting hired in a research lab, and a big shout out to Iron Lab at CU Boulder, because they're doing some amazing work over there. So from that course, I ended up spending the rest of school doing augmented reality research, specifically focusing on depth perception in augmented reality. And that was my first exposure to the HoloLens. And so through building this, starting my mixed reality career early within the research space, it's allowed me to really think of so many ideas and see the potential that this space has. And as far as obstacles along the way, it's definitely been it is a challenge starting out in a new space. And especially within the research setting, you need to think of different problems you need to solve. And most of the time, it's the first time you're encountering these problems. So it's developing a mindset, workarounds, and just never giving up. And that's my introduction.
That's awesome. I was wondering, for the two other people on the panel, what was your experience like coming into mixed reality?
Yeah, I will say for me, I've only been in this space for a year and a half, and I don't have a computer science background. I actually came from the luxury fashion industry. But with regards to how I even became interested, honestly, I was at the airport and I saw a demo at a Microsoft event with a HoloLens. And at that point, most folks had seen HoloLens, but for me, what really made it amazing was that I saw real-time speech translation. And so I had a background in linguistics from undergrad, and anytime anyone does anything with speech, I'm right there. So I had shared on Twitter that I thought it was cool. I asked for resources, and then immediately folks were chiming in with how to get started. And so I spent the next 6 months after that just trying to get ramped up on skills. For me, that is what presented an obstacle because I only had a Python background, and that was from self-learning. So I never went to school or a boot camp or anything. It was through tutorials and such. And so for me, making that transition to C# was more so the biggest obstacle I ran into. But then joining my cloud advocacy team, that made a big difference. There was a lot of learning, even still to this day, I'm learning. But as Catherine and Archana had mentioned, the areas that they both work in, I also take bits and pieces of what they do, and I'm able to create content for the community as well. So the language part, I would say, switching to C# was probably the biggest obstacle for me.
That's great insight. And Archana, what is your perspective on this?
Yeah, so very different than the other two. So the first time I tried on a HoloLens was at a Microsoft hackathon, and before that I had never tried it before, and this was around when the first HoloLens had launched. And I remember putting it on my head. I was like, is this real? Am I in a sci-fi movie? I don't know, am I an Iron Man? It just felt absolutely amazing. And that's when that's what kind of caught my interest, and I started looking into, how can I get into this field without having any prior research or prior experience in computer vision and graphics, as much as I thought I needed. But turns out you don't actually need that. And it worked out really well, because that's when Microsoft started exploring more of the mixed reality cloud space. And I had experience in Office 3 in distributed systems and services from my time at Office 365. So it turns out those skills were actually super valuable in the mixed reality space at that point. So I was able to find a team which needed, the skill sets that I had. And that's what got me into the field. I transitioned completely from working on email and Exchange backend to working in mixed reality, just because I found the skill sets that were common for me. And I started off as a developer in the mixed reality space, and then now I transitioned to program manager, just to see, a different approach, see the things from the product side. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But that's kind of been, I've had a windy route to where I am right now, but learned so much along the way. And in terms of obstacles, I think one of the biggest things, Kathleen kind of touched upon it, but is the pace at which things are moving in this field is amazing. But at the same time, it's like, I just learned this. How is this happening now? It's really, really fast. And it's amazing to see the progress and the innovation that's being made, but it's also really hard to keep up with everything that's going on. But I think it's just been really fun.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. And something that I got from all of you that you said was you talked all about your skill sets and the different skill sets that it took for you to learn to be within this space. And I think it would be really interesting, because I'm seeing in the Q&A that a lot of people are asking, what skills do I need to enter the mixed reality space? So can you all provide some insight about that, about what skills that you learned that really helped you be successful in this space, and something that maybe was even a surprise to you, a skill that you didn't even know that, oh, I need this in this space, but as you're in it, it turned out that you needed that?
I can start off with that, because I think it really depends on what your interest is. One thing I've come to learn is that it's very much can be overwhelming for trying to do everything in the mixed reality space. There's so many different facets that come into play. So if you like more working within UX, for example, then you're going to need skills in terms of that area. If you want to be a person who's actually creating different apps, that's a completely different skill set. If you're more so similar to what I do in my role, I do code and build apps, but I also teach. So there's a whole different skill set there with being able to provide instruction. So with that said, find the area that you're interested in, and that's more so what I've come to realize is what should really help guide your path, but also realizing that there is some overlap. And in addition to that, me personally, Unity is one thing I got ramped up on, followed by C#. I know here at Microsoft, we have a great amount of C# resources, especially if you head over to Microsoft Learn. And then I've also partnered up with some folks who do work in design, because if you are building apps, you still need that component as well. You want to make sure you're creating great experiences. But I will let the other two take over.
What April said is totally it depends a lot on which particular field, which particular space you want to enter in the mixed reality field. For me personally, having a lot of cloud experience and experience with AWS, Azure, GCP, things like that have helped a lot, because I was able to use that to help. So basically taking the taking a lot of the compute off of the device and moving it into the cloud. So working with distributed systems and scale. But I also know if you're someone who's interested in more of the UI UX part, just start designing apps, start building things, put your stuff out there. There's a very active Twitter community in the mixed reality space, and they're pretty warm and welcoming from most of the other spaces that I've seen. So, just start putting your stuff out there, use the Unity and MRTK quick starts to get started.
Yeah, from my perspective, I'm going to maybe talk about more from the development perspective. So the way I started within the mixed reality space was like using Maya, you can use Blender, which are all like 3D modeling programs. So then that helps you get the knowledge of 3D geometry and transforms within the 3D space. So you get familiar with how things are placed. And so then you're able to build that knowledge and step into Unity. And Unity is probably the best starting point, at least for getting the basics down of like game development. And also we have both April and Archana have mentioned MRTK. So I would recommend starting with Unity and making sure to get the basics down, because I do think mixed reality development does initially seem intimidating. But the way you build on that knowledge is making sure you understand the core basics of, like, for example, Unity, and then build on that knowledge and slowly work your way up to mixed reality development. And then even in MRTK, we have simple components, and we're working to simplify certain interfaces to make them a bit more intuitive and easier for developers. But that skill set, I would definitely say to start with Unity 3D models, and from there you can build on that knowledge.
That was great. I think you all touched on like Unity, MRTK, learning about 3D models. And a question I have for you is, based off those skills that you've built, what are some of the misconceptions that you think you had prior to being in the mixed reality space, and how has being your experience now in the mixed reality space debunk those misconceptions that you once had?
I can take a first stab at this one. I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that only folks who have a lot of computer vision expertise are the ones who can get into this field. Like you have to have a PhD, or you have to have research experience in this field. And as much as it's great to have that, there are other roles within mixed reality which don't necessarily require those skills. There's, developer advocacy, business, sales, marketing. There's a lot of stuff in the design space. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that only people with CV experience can get in. In fact, I think what we really appreciate in this space is having people from different product groups come in and give that expertise, just so there's more inclusivity in the space and the kind of markets that we're trying to approach. I think that's one of the big things. And I think the second big misconception I hear a lot is that people assume it's only for, kind of the gaming and entertainment space, but there's actually a lot of value that mixed reality can add in the manufacturing, education, medical, all of those spaces. So there's a lot of actual commercial enterprise use of it, as opposed to just the AR games that we see.
Yes, and for me, I think Archana touched on this a bit, but the misconception that it's only for games, or you can only create mixed reality apps if you're a game developer or have previous experience developing in game engines. But it is possible to use Unity without like C# experience and create a very simple mixed reality app just to get you familiar with those tools. But definitely it is very easy to get started. There's a lot of tutorials online, and I would definitely recommend watching just as many tutorials as you can and just absorb the info, and then maybe it'll help connect the dots later in the future.
And I'm going to have a slight teeny tiny plug there. So if you're not really a C# person or a C++ person, but more so JavaScript is your thing, internally, one of our guys on the Mixed Reality team, Nick Klingensmith, he created Stereo Kit just for you if you're a JavaScript person. So check that out, definitely. It's a really good alternative, but to what everyone else has said, it makes a difference. But if you're not using Unity, of course, you can use Unreal. And then, as I mentioned, with Nick has Stereo Kit, which we support as well here at Microsoft. So that was all.
That's awesome. Archana mentioned something really interesting about the future of mixed reality and its capabilities, and I thought it'd be really interesting to touch on that and get a little bit of insight about where you think mixed reality is headed and the opportunities in that space.
I can start us off. So where I see, or at least different opportunities that I see mixed reality making an impact here is almost embedding accessibility principles into the development process. So I see an impact for people creating apps and having accessibility principles embedded into these tools to make it easy to expand, make MR more inclusive of everybody and their development needs. And then as far as applications, Archana touched on this, the medical applications, remote surgery, first responders, manufacturing as well, just any type of remote assistant, remote assist capabilities is going to be huge for mixed reality.
Yeah, adding on to that, I could talk about this all day, but we don't have that much time. Another one is remote collaboration. I think that's going to be a huge potential industry, and we're already seeing a little of that come up with remote learning and remote assist. And I think everyone got a bit of a taste of it with Microsoft Mesh this morning, and just being able to have an event at that scale remotely with everyone feeling like they're in the same location. I think that's going to be huge to unlock a lot of capabilities. And yeah, April, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I will say, as it relates especially to Microsoft Mesh, but also answering where things are going, I think the fact that we're seeing platforms come to fruition, whereas you don't have to have a head-mounted device to actually take part in what we're doing, it does make this particular area more accessible for people with regards to someone who might not have a HoloLens, but all they have, I think someone outside doing work, but if they have like a smartphone, for example, or their computer or a tablet, that might be a device that's more approachable for someone to get started with, or someone might have better access to that instead. So the fact that we have a chance to more so broaden the device availability to actually work in this area, I think that's really good, and I'm glad to see that that's the direction that we're going, so that way hopefully no one feels like they're left out and can't get started with creating these experiences.
I love how you all mentioned how there's so many different industries and different ways mixed reality can go and diverge, and I think it really shows the future impact that it can have. So based off that question, I'm seeing a lot in the chat that people are asking a lot of role-specific questions, and I think it would be really helpful, since we have a diverse range of roles on this panel, to maybe talk about something in your role that you do that you didn't really expect going into your role, or something that may have surprised you, and what your role is, what do you do day to day, to give people more of an idea of what a role in mixed reality is like.
Yeah, I will say for me, beyond the coding part, a lot of it is being able to form relationships with folks, especially over on the product team. So given that cloud advocacy is separate from the mixed reality product team, we partner a lot with different PMs as well as engineering. So that way, as we're creating content, or if we have questions, we can ask someone and they're there to help us out. I do that. Really important, because they're there to help you, which is nice. And yeah, we definitely code, but having those relationships is super helpful, especially if you get stuck on something. Like if I'm building on an application for something, there's someone that I can reach out to on a team, but no one really works in a silo by themselves, I would say.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about what the kind of program manager role looks like in mixed reality. Again, there's many definitions of the role, but the way it looks like for me is I work a lot with our customers and our partners to understand what their scenarios and their space, the problems that they're trying to solve is, and using that to kind of help build our roadmap and decide how we build our products and how we build our solutions, while making sure, while working with other teams in the mixed reality space to make sure that we're trying to build a cohesive overall mixed reality developer story. And you'll hear Kipman say this a lot, but the whole idea is we kind of want to make the platform and ecosystem open, so it's easy for anyone to onboard and build on top of the mixed reality environment ecosystem. So a lot of my work is working with customers, working with the engineering team, designers, trying to figure out what's the best way for us to build a solution and a platform that works well for our customers, and kind of getting feedback from them to build a better product.
Yeah, so for my role, so I'm a software engineer on the open source mixed reality toolkit Unity product, and my day-to-day is writing C# components for mixed reality. So for example, I have contributed to the Leap Motion extension, a feature called Tap to Place, and other other mixed reality related input components. So my day-to-day is designing an architecture for how best to design these components. And one aspect that I didn't think of, and that I've kind of learned on the job here, is designing a component and figuring out how to present it the best way to the user. So making sure that the way that component is presented in Unity, and this can be done through writing like custom Unity inspectors. So making sure that the user is not overwhelmed by all the properties, and almost layering the approach to certain properties to make sure that the user can like get an idea of the basic properties, the advanced properties, so then you can slowly build on that knowledge. But I would say like user-centered design and making sure like the perspective of the user and how they're going to use this tool is very clear and intuitive.
Yeah, that's all great insight. And I would also like to add in a bit, because I'm a PM on the mixed reality apps team, and I saw a couple of questions about people who may be early in career, whether they're like high school students, college students, or early in career wanting to be in the MR space. And I just started in August of 2020, so I'm very recent. And I wanted to let people know that it's definitely possible to be introduced to the mixed reality space early in your career. And I think the best way to do that is to reach out to just people in the mixed reality space early on and start asking them about what their experiences are like, because as we've all said in this panel, that the roles they vary a lot. So by talking to different people in different spaces of mixed reality, you may find a specific section of mixed reality that appeals to you. My day-to-day looks like working with engineers and designers on features specifically for mixed reality apps. And I just wanted to also say that it's a very collaborative space, because it's so new. Things are very collaborative, and people are really there to help you thrive in this space. That's been my experience. So I just thought it would be helpful to say what it's like from the PM side. And on that topic, so I had a question for the panels, is what has helped you grow your career in the mixed reality space, and how have you learned to create community?
Yeah, I will say probably 80% of my job is community. So what's helped me personally, the connections that you make, honestly, and being in tune with what's going on. I know as you all start to probably look to see what's happening in the community, there's a lot. So for me, I like to be a little bit more broad in how I'm staying up to date on different areas. But I know for some folks who more so not specialize, but specialize in certain areas, such as spatial audio, which is what I was trying to say, or like designing as well, just to name some, they really hone in on those areas. And just reaching out to people, sorry, there's a tree being cut outside of me, but reaching out to people who are working in an area that you're interested in is really helpful. And that's honestly what has helped me. And yeah, and attending events too. We have a mixed reality speaker series that we do as well here. And it's also a great chance to see what everyone else is doing. And we also have AltSpace VR mixers as well that's involved with that too.
I can speak to it a little bit. So for me, I found a couple of things have helped me personally with kind of helping with growing my career and growing my skill set. I think one of them has been making transitions based off of what I find interesting and kind of what I feel like, what I think I might be excited to learn about. So the transitioning from the dev to the PM was a lot because, hey, that seems really interesting. I don't have those skill sets. That's something I want to learn about. So I think that's been really useful to me, just making transitions and not being afraid to learn the new things. I think that's been huge. And the second thing is, I think it took me a while to come to the realization that everyone in the space is kind of trying to figure it out. It's so new and it's so niche that there's no right or wrong way to do it, right? There's a lot of, we're learning in the process. We're building the thing every day, and that's how we're figuring out the industry and the space. And I had this assumption that everyone here knows exactly what they're doing, and I'm just, stumbling my way through. But everyone's figuring their career and their life and their growth and the industry out, and just understanding that really helped me pivot the way I thought about how to grow myself and my career here.
Yeah, and Archana touched on this a bit, but just thinking about the vast amount of opportunity for innovation within this space. And so there's so much room for creativity and room for different approaches to all different problems, because there's no set of core principles that we're following yet. There's still opportunity to innovate those. And so what has helped me create community in mixed reality is definitely reaching out to people with similar interests. For example, if you see somebody on LinkedIn or other projects, reach out, and that you find that really interesting, reach out to them, find out more. And you might find that you have a lot of things in interest or a lot of intersecting interests within the mixed reality field. But networking, attending events, you never know who you're going to meet there, and making sure to grow that community by reaching out.
Thank you all for sharing your insights. And one last question, I know we're coming up on time, that I thought would be really great to ask is that I see a lot of people in this Q&A asking about concrete resources for getting started with mixed reality, specifically online learning tutorials or different just ways that they can use to get introduced into that space that are already existed. Are there things that you would all suggest?
Yeah, definitely everyone go hurry up and go to learn. Between the mixed reality team, they authored a module for Intro to Mixed Reality. Over in our side of Cloud Advocacy, I authored a module for getting started with the Mixed Reality Toolkit, as well as Azure our speech services. And then just recently, I published one on Azure Remote Rendering. I will drop links into the chat for that. And I would say start with those. Also, our documentation that we have over in the Mixed Reality Docs is super helpful. So I'll place everything into an announcement here in the Q&A for everyone.
Thank you, April.
Sorry, plus one on the Learn links. They're amazing. April's done a great job with those. Other than that, there's the MRTK quick starts. Those are a really good place. I think another thing which people might not know much about is the meetups. There's, I think you mentioned it before, but I think it's weekly. There's weekly meetups in the MR space, and there's a lot of, there's the Microsoft meetups, but there's also a lot of local meetups. I would highly recommend going there and connecting with the community, building a network in that space. That's a great place to get started. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who are like, I don't have a HoloLens device. How do I start building things? You can start building AR apps on mobile platforms. You can use things like Azure Spatial Anchors and start building a collaborative multi-platform mobile app. That's a great way to get started. I know that there's the Microsoft Careers website where if you look for jobs with the hashtag mixed reality, there's a bunch of postings that get published over there. And we also have teams actually, what's really amazing is there's teams all over the world. I know there's teams in Africa, in Europe, in North America, Canada. So just look everywhere and just try building the community and the network by reaching out to the people when you're interested in something.
Yeah, and to finish up, I want to make sure that people know that the Mixed Reality Toolkit, a HoloLens is not required. It supports VR headsets. You can use iOS, Android. So a HoloLens is not required to use MRTK. So it is a cross-platform toolkit. So you can start with any device.
Great. Thank you all so much for answering my questions and answering the questions from the audience. It has been really awesome, insightful. I learned a lot through this conversation. So with that being said, we are up on time. Thank you all for joining at this event, and I hope you all learned something.